Happy Independence Day to all our Pakistani viewers around the globe, and a happy Independence Day for our Indian Muslim brothers and sisters for tomorrow. I'm Dr. Iram Rizvi, and I will be hosting and facilitating today's lecture, which is the 6th and final installment of the series of lectures on prophethood. So welcome everyone, welcome Sister Nargis Ali, I can see you on there now, and welcome to all the people that have joined us. We've got Jabin Naqvi here, Asma, and a few people online. Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous lectures, just be aware that they are available on YouTube and Facebook for you to catch up on later. Today's lecture will be covering the Holy Prophet YAQUB alayhi salam. And so today we will start by recitation of the Holy Quran by Seher Zahra. Is Seher Zahra online? Sorry. I'm not sure if she is online, but maybe we could start by recitation of the Holy Quran. Hold on, just see what's going on. Zahra, do you want to read Surah Qul Huwallah? Is it going on? No, okay. Let's just see what's going on, sorry. Okay, I'm not sure whether I should just continue what's going on. Just give me a second. Okay, so I can start by just a recitation of Surah Qul, and then we can maybe move on. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. So before we move on, I would like to thank 14 for these lectures, and also for everything that they've been doing for our local community for the last 10 years. They've been working really hard to ensure that we are inspiring everyone, namely our youth, both religiously and spiritually, through education. They hold a variety of indoor-outdoor activities, from arranging international trips to online sessions, camping trips with youth clubs. So just a thank you to all our volunteers working for the 14 team. So we have now reached the 6th and final installment of our lecture by our wonderful sister Nargis Ali, who mashallah has received her knowledge from So Assalamu alaikum Nargis Ali, welcome. Before we start,
how are you, Sister Iram?
Alhamdulillah, not too bad. So I've been asked to ask you a couple of questions before we move on to our lecture. So one of the questions is that we've had that you speak quite a number of languages. So it'd be lovely to know how many languages you can speak and how you came about learning them.
Oh, it's actually not that many. I don't know who gave you that information, but I can speak Urdu, that is obviously the national language. Then there's Burshevski, that's my mother tongue from northern areas. That's Burshevski. Then I learned Farsi when I moved to Iran to study. Learned Arabic. Mostly I learned the classic Arabic, which is called Fusha. So I'm not fluent at speaking the colloquial Arabic. Yes, I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's, yeah, Urdu, Burshevski, yeah, and yeah, I can speak a bit of English, as you can see. That's all. Yeah, it's 5 languages.
Another question that we've got here is, what qualities do you most like about our community?
Our community here in London, or in general, yeah. I would say the topmost is the unconditional love that I've received ever since I moved to the UK. and the way people are there for each other. People go out of their way to support each other. And to be honest, from the very beginning when I moved here, I never felt like I'm in a foreign country. Everyone was like a family to me, and through thick and thin, I've never felt lonely, so to speak. No matter what happened in my life, I've always felt supported, and that's the spirit I've seen in general in here.
Okay, mashallah, that's really good to hear. Okay, so before I hand over to you, I would like, if possible, for all the people that have joined in on with us, that if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Sister Nargis here, you can always fill it into the chat. And at the end, we have a question and answer session, so we can ask them, and hopefully Sister Nargis will be able to answer them. So let me hand you over to Sister Nargis.
Thank you, Sister Iram. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today, the prophet under discussion is Prophet YAQUB or Jacob alayhi salam. Now about Jacob, what we are going to do today is the cross-examination, a comparison of Jacob in the Bible and Old Testament especially, and in Quran or Islamic traditions. Some of the facts are pretty much common between the two narratives, but there are other aspects which are very different. Like I've discussed this in previous sessions as well. In some cases, the Bible, as it has come to us now in these days, has portrayed a very negative picture, so to speak, about the prophets. Sometimes the people who were close to prophets, like I spoke about Sarah, wife of Prophet Ibrahim. So Jacob or YAQUB is one of the people. We see that there are a lot of slanders about him in the Old Testament. But the thing is, we as Muslims, we take the word of Quran as a canon to sort of approve or disapprove the credibility of the stories that we hear otherwise or elsewhere, historical narratives or Bible. And what we know for certain is that there has been no alterations in the Holy Quran since the time it was sent down. It is protected. It has been passed down the generations intact. So we are sure that whatever was sent down upon the Prophet, peace be upon him, has reached us as it was. Whereas on the other hand, Old Testament and New Testament, no one actually believes that it is exactly the word of God or what the prophets said themselves. And it's common knowledge that these are the narratives written by the disciples later on, in some cases probably centuries later. So there's a margin of error naturally in what's written there, and obviously open to analysis as well. So Yaqub alayhi salam was son of Prophet Ishaq, Isaac, who was son of Ibrahim or Abraham. So he is a grandson of Prophet Ibrahim. Now, when he was born, he was born to Jacob and his wife called Rebecca. He was born as a twin. So he had a brother called Esau, or Esau in Bible or in English, or and Isu or Ais in Arabic. So this brother, this twin brother, was born first, and Jacob followed after. And it is narrated that Jacob was holding on to his brother's ankle when he was born. So that's why he was named Jacob or YAQUB, which means someone who follows. So he was grabbing onto the ankle and followed him. Now he was, according to Bible, because Esau was the firstborn, even though it was only by moments, but he was the firstborn, so he had a birthright. And because firstborn children would inherit most of their father's possessions, so he had that birthright. Now these twins were very different from each other. In that they were very different. There's I mean, we can say that our narrations also prove the fact that they were twins and they were very different. It is also said that Esau was very outdoorsy. He would go hunting, and that was how his personality was. Whereas Jacob was a thoughtful, quiet person. He would attend to the cattle and spend his time thinking, worshipping his God, and reading scriptures, suhuf, whatever was there. Now, according to the Bible has painted Isaac as a very cunning and deceitful, wicked person up until one big experience that he had. So, according to the narrative of Bible, because Esau was the firstborn, Rebecca, who was their mother, was worried that Isaac would give most of his possessions to him, to Esau, and also obviously the covenant or the prophethood would continue in his generations and not Jacob. Rebecca apparently preferred Jacob. Now this is the narrative of Bible. What we see in the Old Testament. So Rebecca knew that Isaac is going to give his possessions to Esau. So one day, when Isaac had become quite fragile and he knew that his his days are now numbered, he called Esau and said, go hunting and bring an animal and cook it the way I like it and bring it to me, and so that I can bless you in the sense that if I pray for you, so that the prophethood, the covenant can then be transferred into your progeny. Rebecca heard this and she quickly called Jacob and she told him to slaughter some lambs and prepare. She said, slaughter a lamb and bring it to me so I can prepare the food your father likes the best, and then you can go and take his blessings, because he was fragile and weak. He could not see very well. So, Rebecca and Jacob managed to trick him into thinking that this is Esau. And he brought this food in front of his father and said, I'm your firstborn, Esau, and I'm here to take your blessings. And Isaac then blesses him and gives the covenant to him, to Jacob. And when the brother returns and he finds out, he was obviously angry, and Isaac then prays for Esau to serve, to become a servant to his brother. Now this was the narrative of Bible, and according to this, then Rebecca tells her son Jacob to run away from his brother's wrath, and he fled, and he goes to his maternal uncle and lives there for some time. Now on the way there, he has an experience which we can say that it could also be the beginning of his prophethood, and because it's not necessarily linked to this story. Now, according to the narrative of Islam and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, it was obviously known to Isaac already which of his sons would become the prophet after him. It's also possible for two brothers to become prophet at the same time. Like Ibrahim and Lot were prophets at the same time and sent to different nations, although they were cousins, but the same thing can happen between brothers like Musa and Harun. But the fact was that between the sons of Isaac, Esau wasn't made a prophet, and this was already in his knowledge. Isaac already knew that, and according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, prophethood is not something you can trick someone into giving you, because it's something divine, and it's obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides who's going to be the prophet. And before even the birth of the prophet, it is obviously in Allah's knowledge, and the moment a child is born, the prophet, if the father is a prophet, he will realize that this son is going to be the prophet after me. There are certain signs by which they can tell. And also, although according to the Old Testament, Jacob later on repented, and he was then blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Shia school of thought, at least, we believe that a prophet, even before the start of his prophethood, formal beginning of his preaching or first revelation, the prophet is infallible since the time of his birth. So it might be possible for other people to become a saint or to reach a high status after having sinned in early life, or even in as an adult, and to repent later and become a pious person. But that's not how it works with the prophets or any divine position, prophethood or imamate. The person has to be infallible since the time of his birth. So Jacob, being a prophet, cannot have committed all those wicked and deceitful sins. And in fact, it's the opposite that we see in the narrations, that when Esau realized that Jacob is the one who is going to be the father of many prophets, he became envious. But whether he actually did something, or was there conflict between the two brothers, I did not personally find much about that. He was envious, and there were some prophets from his progeny as well, some prophets from his among his descendants as well, but most of the prophets were from Prophet YAQUB's progeny, and he was later on called Israel, and Bani Israel had thousands of prophets among them. And in one narration we read that there were 8,000 prophets in history, and 4,000 of them were from Bani Israel, from the descendants of Yaqub. So now we have this narration, and going forward, according to Bible, at one point when he was wandering alone in the wilderness, Yaqub lied down on a heap, lays his head on a stone and he lies down. And at that point, he has a dream or an experience, and he sees that the heavens have opened, and there's a ladder that comes down from the heaven, and angels are coming and going through that ladder. And according to this narration, he actually witnesses the glory of his Lord, and God speaks to him, and he says that I am the God of your father Isaac and God of Abraham before him. And obviously he announces his the prophethood. So now this experience has a great importance in Jewish mysticism, or so to Irfan, so to speak. This ladder is called the ladder of Jacob in Jewish Kabbalah or Kabbalah, and it's symbolic for them when you say that I passed through the Jacob's ladder. It's symbolic. It's a symbolic term to say that I have passed 4 roads in my journey towards divine. So now this experience has is of great importance, and it could as well be the beginning of his prophethood. And obviously we Muslims and Jews, both of them do not believe in a physical existence for God, or we do not believe that he's matter or anything similar to matter. This is something common between us. So if we read the words he saw God, these words are all open to interpretation, and definitely the Jewish people, and especially the Jewish scholars, do not believe that Jacob actually saw God, but rather a sign of God, or like we say in the Holy Quran, the glory of God, or he saw signs of God, like the experiences Abraham had, and the Holy Quran refers to it as showing Ibrahim the malakut of the heavens and earth. So something similar happened to Jacob here. He had a very deep mystical experience, could as well have been the beginning of his prophethood as well. So one significant event. Now, according to our traditions, and as well as the Old Testament, Jacob had 12 sons. 11 of them were born in Padan Aram, and later on he moves to Canaan, where his grandfather Ibrahim, Sarah, and Lot were buried, and Benjamin, the youngest, was born in Canaan. The 6 of these sons were born to Leah, who was Jacob's cousin. Now 6 of them who were born to Leah were called Reuben. If someone is taking notes for names, there are some names from the family of a prophet. Reuben or Ruil, also Rubin in Arabic, Simeon, Shamun, Levi or Lawi, Judah or Yehuda, Issachar or Yeshakir, Zebulun, or in Arabic, Rialun or Zabulun. These 6 sons were born to Leah, the older daughter of Jacob's cousin. Later, when Leah passed away, Jacob marries Rachel or Rahel, and Joseph and Benjamin were born to Rahel. They are the youngest, and he also had 2 other temporary marriages to Bilhah, and 2 sons who were born to her were Dan and Naphtali, or Dan and Naphtali, Zilpah, another wife called Zilpah, and two sons were born to her called Gad or Jad, and Asher or Ashir. So these are the 12 sons, and each later on, each son becomes the leader of their own family and tribe, and from these sons grow 12 tribes and numerous prophets, as I said. Now, when Jacob moves to Canaan with his sons, with his 11 sons, after Benjamin or Benjamin was born, there's mention of one particular night, a fateful night, in the Old Testament as well as in our traditions. But the nature of this night and what happened during this night is very different in both narratives. Now, according to Bible, what happened was when he was fleeing from his brother, and he was, although he was out of the land and he was closer to Canaan, he was still afraid that his brother might harm his family. So he sends them ahead of him, and he himself stays in a house or a room in somewhere in a desert. According to Bible, they say that a man comes to him, and this man is, in some verses it says God comes to him, and in some other places we read the word malach, which is an angel. Like in Arabic, malak is an angel, and in Hebrew it's called an angel is called a malach. So an angel came to him. So according to the Bible, they wrestle all night. Now these are the words, and they wrestle all night, and the Nauzubillah, God is trying to overpower Jacob, and he can see that it's Jacob is not backing away until it's nearly morning, and God says that now let me go because it's almost daybreak. But Jacob doesn't let him go. So at this point, God touched his just above his left leg, and that made him. It was a divine touch or something that made him realize that he's weak, and he submitted, and he somehow he admitted defeat at that point. And when that happened, Jacob asked who the other person was, and God then says that I have blessed you, and you are from now on, you have become Israel, because he's given this title called Israel. Now, although the apparent the narrative is, if you look at it superficially, it's something not even Jews who believe the Old Testament to be the divine message could believe in such a phenomena, that God himself becoming a body and coming down on earth and wrestling with one of his servants or one of his creatures. So there has been interpretations about what this means, what to wrestle with God, or the whole ordeal, what it was. The scholars, the Jewish scholars, have interpreted the whole wrestling um, uh, as a as a mystical experience in which God wants Jacob to submit spiritually, obviously, and he wants to bless Jacob. He sees this potential in Jacob, whereas Jacob is at that point, partly because of his cunning and deceitful ways before this point, that the things that he did to his brother, it's hard for Jacob to submit his soul, and there's an element of arrogance, but God is trying to enter a relationship, a spiritual relationship with him, and after there's something God did to Jacob. Now, according to some the Jewish narrative, God actually gave Jacob some physical pain in his body, which ended up which helped Jacob to realize how dependent and how weak he is, and how dependent he is on his God's mercy. And at that point, he submitted. And when he submitted and repented, God then blessed him and gave him the title of Israel. Israel has different meanings. I mean, different people have said different things about it. One meaning is power of God. Could be because he was given divine power to obviously carry out the work of God. In most of our narrations, Israel it has the same meaning as Abdullah, or servant of God. Il being God and Isra being the servant. So now this fateful night, as I said, is very different in biblical narrative and in the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. Now, I'm saying the fateful night because there's mention of one particular night in Bible, and then one particular night in the traditions, and one can only speculate that it might be the same night because we can see that a lot happened in that night. According to the narrative of Ahlul Bayt, now we have in different narrations, especially in Bihar al-Anwar, there are many hadiths about the incident of that. Right now Jacob had a habit of, was very generous. Allah had given him he was blessed with quite a lot of wealth, and he was blessed with cattle and everything. So he one way of showing gratitude was to give out. He was very generous, and every day he would slaughter one animal and call out in the city to anyone. Really, there were no particular restrictions. Anyone who wanted to eat, anyone who was in need would come to Jacob's house, and they would eat, and then they would leave. So one night, as usual, Jacob slaughtered an animal, and it was served, and all people came and ate. Now, one person called Dimyal, he was a pious person, a hermit who would, keep to himself and worship his God. He had run out of supplies, and he happened to pass by the city. But he reached the city of Canaan, or the land of Canaan, at the time when everything was finished. Now Jacob has served people; they've gone back to their houses. Jacob is now busy with whatever his evening routine or whatever, Dimyal then came, and he cried at large. I mean, not in particular to Jacob. He cried at large that I'm hungry. Is there someone to feed me? Now Jacob, thinking that okay, he had done his duty for the day, maybe didn't think twice. Maybe he probably just thought that okay, someone will be feeding him. That one moment of, probably he was busy doing his dhikr, worship. In any case, now Dimyal returned from Canaan empty-handed, and before going to sleep hungry, he spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He cried and he basically complained. Now this city was obviously full of people, all kind of people. Obviously, not everyone was poor. Everyone could hear him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now reprimands only one person, who was Jacob, because he is the prophet of God. And this wasn't even something that was wajib. Obviously, he had done charity and he was always busy in charity, but he missed this one person, or this one call, probably thinking that someone will be attending to him. Definitely too busy, things happen. But it was a tarkul awla, which means that it was better, even if he was worshipping his Lord, it was better to abandon that and go and help Dimyal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Joseph woke up, he sent his angel down and reprimands Jacob about it, and says that I mean, my servant was here in your city crying out for help and nobody helped him. So now, because of that, there will be great trials and tribulations for you. And also, now, if I can find quickly the words of the angel sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is obviously a kind of punishment, but at the same time, it's a mercy and blessing, because through that trial, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bless Yaqub and his son Yusuf with a higher status than they can imagine. And he actually says to Jacob that don't despair, because we send the hardest of trials to the people who are closest to us. Now, during the same night, now when Jacob hears that, no, not in the morning, sorry, during the night. I mean, when Dimyal went to sleep and Jacob got up to for prayers during the night, he was reprimanded, and Jacob then spends the whole night crying, repenting, asking for forgiveness, and this was to become an everyday ordeal for Jacob from then on. So he spends that night crying and lamenting for what he has done. He had fallen short of expectation, and that was something extraordinary for Jacob. Now, at the same time, during the same night, Joseph, his son. Now we've done the part about Joseph, the lecture about Joseph. Joseph was very different to all his brothers, and it was very obvious from the beginning that he has something special about him, and he is the one who's going to be the prophet after him. So during the same night, we have this verse in Holy Quran, "Inna ma'al usri yusra." So with hardship there's ease. Allah has sent his trial for Yaqub, but at the same time, he's also giving him these glad tidings of how it's going to end. So Joseph wakes up and comes to his father Joseph, comes to his father Jacob and narrates his dream that I saw that I was sitting on a throne and I saw that sun and moon and 11 stars are bowing down to me. So now this is a bittersweet moment for Jacob, because on one hand he can see that his son is going to be given this lofty position, and on the other hand he realizes that the trial that Allah spoke about is going to be through his beloved son, the one son that he loved the most. And also Jacob is I mean, one reason for his sorrow was the fact that Joseph had done nothing wrong. He's only 9 years old at the time, and now it's hard for Jacob to accept that Joseph is going to suffer because of the tarkul ola that he himself committed. So now. According to the Quran and also Bible, the brothers heard about it, although Jacob told Yusuf not to tell his brothers about the dream, but they found out, according to some narrations, the one of the, probably Leah, the older sister of Rachel, or their mother basically heard the dream and told them. Whatever, were no matter how, but the news, the dream was enough for them um, to tell them. Obviously, they are sons of, they've been brought up in the household of a prophet, and they realize that something special is going to be given to Joseph. Prophethood is going to be, I mean, the next prophet is Joseph, and this was something they couldn't come to terms with. Now, people often question about why were they jealous? Why did Prophet Yaqub treat his sons differently? Obviously, partly it's natural when when a child is younger, the youngest always gets the most attention. And then there was the fact that Joseph had some distinct characteristics about him. He could understand his father in a way that no one else could, because he had that divine knowledge in him. But at the same time, there's nothing to suggest that Yaqub or Jacob was in any way different in his treatment to Joseph and his other sons. He was compassionate to all of them. Even then, even if we assume that there was a difference in the way he treated his sons, normal people, not even sons of prophets, even if they feel jealous of their younger siblings, considering there was a huge age difference between those sons and Yusuf. They were, at that point, they were big, strong men, as they call themselves in the Holy Quran as well. If we have a son or daughter who's an adult, who's a grown up, and you have another child who's only 5 or 6, if this older sister or brother sees that you're very gentle with the younger one, even if he or she feels jealous or envious about the treatment, the extra kindness that you show to the younger one, they don't end up planning or plotting to kill them or throwing them into a well. That's and not even one or two, but 10 brothers are in the conspiracy together. So it's not just a sibling rivalry, or just because he was more loving to Yusuf and not to them. The problem has to be something bigger. And according to the Quran as well, it was triggered after the dream that Joseph had. So it has to be something of great importance to trigger something so evil in them. And we obviously have so many examples in history where a brother kills a brother uh, to in order to rule a country. Mamun al-Rashid killed his brother Amin al-Rashid because he did not want a rival in as a ruler, as a caliph. So it had to be something of that importance. So after this dream, it was apparent that Joseph is going to be the next prophet. He's going to be given this very high station. So they probably thought to themselves that if there was no Joseph in the picture, then probably it would come to one of us. And the other things, there were just justifications according to exegesis. The things that they were saying that our father is more attentive to Joseph, they were trying to justify their actions for themselves because they knew that what they plotted is terribly wrong. Okay, so after that night, ironically, as much as Jacob wanted to protect Joseph because he knew that something is going to come and Joseph is going to be tried, ironically, he became more protective of him, and that actually led the brothers to, it confirmed what they were suspecting. We've gone through the story of how they took their son, their brother Joseph, threw him in a well. Uh, Now Jacob always used to put the vial that was given to his grandfather Abraham when he was being thrown into the fire. The vial that had a tunic inside, the tunic from heaven. This vial was used to be around his son Joseph's neck. Uh, and when he was thrown into the well, that vial was still with him. And according to narrations, it was a source of comfort for him. Now the sons have thrown him. They come back and they are crying crocodile tears. Um, and Jacob's answer is he's very dignified in the way he dealt with the issue, although he was heartbroken and he even faints when he sees the shirt full of blood. But when he brings the shirt close to his face, he says, "This is not the blood of Yusuf. It doesn't. The shirt doesn't smell like Yusuf. Um, Satan has led you to do something terrible, but I will be very gracefully patient." And that's what he does. I mean, which father can bear such a burden? And I mean, he's at that point. He believes that Joseph has been killed, but he still doesn't react much to his sons, and he keeps his the sorrow and grief within himself, and he only cries to his Lord. And according to the Holy Quran and the traditions, he cries so much that over the passage of time, he lost his eyesight. Um, Now, probably for 20 years, the separation lasted for 20 years. And after the famine that hit Egypt, the sons were then sent to get ration from Joseph, who had become Yusuf's thief at that point, and he was leading the, let's say, um, financial matters of Egypt, and he was called Al Aziz. Anyone of higher position was called Aziz uh, in Egypt, and I mean that's an Arabic translation of whatever the word actually was. So the brothers go there. First time they go, they get the rations and the money back, as we've discussed it before. Second time they go, Benjamin is kept there. And the third time, when the brothers come back and Benjamin is not with them, the father, after 6 months, when some of the brothers are sent again to get some rations, the father writes a letter to the Aziz of Egypt, to Yusuf unknowingly, and the way he begins his letter from, he introduces himself: I am Jacob, son of Ishaq, son of Ibrahim, who was thrown into the fire, but the fire did not burn him. And then he speaks about his love for his son. He says, I had one beloved son, he was separated from me. Um, and the whole story in very briefly. And he says that there was the brother, the son that I lost had a brother who looked very much like him. Now, Joseph was so beautiful. They say that if beauty was to be rationed into two portions, half of it Joseph had. So said, I had one son who looked somewhat similar to him, and when I missed my son, I would hug Benjamin. Now you have kept him for a sin that he has not committed, because I am not a thief, and I have not raised a thief, and all these he requests for Benjamin's relief. When Yusuf sees the letter, at that point he's not showing his brothers who he is, but he loses his composure and he kisses the letter, he puts it on his eyes, and he breaks down. And the brothers are very much in shock at his reaction. But at this point, he then obviously opens up and he tells his brothers, and they ask for forgiveness. He immediately forgives them, and then he opens that vial. Now, until this day, he has the vial, and it's been passed down generation to generation among prophets. So he has that vial around his neck. He opens it and takes the tunic out and gives it to his brothers and say that, give this to my father. In the letter, he realizes by reading the letter that his father has lost his eyesight because of excessive crying. So he said, take this tunic, and gives it to Judah, who had carried the shirt with fake blood on it. He gives the shirt to Judah and says, when you get there, put this shirt on my father's, place this shirt on my father's eyes, and that will bring his eyesight back. Now, around the same time, now Jacob is so, because now Benjamin was gone as well, so he's so anxious for his sons that he calls down uh, Israel, the angel of death, and he says, do you take all the souls, or are there other angels who take the souls? And Israel answers that although many angels take the souls, but all of them are presented to me. And he asks, did my son Joseph's soul, was it presented to you? And he answered, no, it hasn't been presented to me. So at that point, he realizes that Joseph is alive somewhere, and he becomes hopeful to meet him. Now, when the sons come back, the moment they leave Egypt and start moving towards Canaan, Jacob says to the sons who are the remaining sons who were with him, he says that I can smell Yusuf, and it's said that he could smell the smell of heaven. He could smell the scent of heaven because of the tunic of Abraham. And when the sons come back, they obviously rejoice, and then Jacob and his wife, and in some narrations his sister, who was very fond of Joseph, is the moon, according to in the Holy Quran. All the sons, Jacob. That's all right.
Sorry, if you could just start to conclude, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, this is, we are moving towards the end. Now he moves to Egypt, and Prophet Yusuf then receives him with utmost respect. He gives up his own space for his father. And at that point, the dream that he saw years ago is realized. Jacob then, using his son's status, starts preaching the word of God and the religion in Egypt. And he lives for 2 years after that and passes away in Egypt, but he was then taken to Canaan to be buried next to his grandfather Abraham.
Thank you so much, Sister Nargis, and thank you to all the participants and everyone that's online listening. I think you guys noticed in the beginning, Seher Zahra, one of our little girls from our community, was going to start out by reciting from the Holy Quran, but she wasn't online at that moment. But I understand she's online with us now. So if Seher can recite, that would be wonderful.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Surah Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi'ashabil fil alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil wa arsala alayhim dayran ababil tarmihim bihijaratin min sijil faja'alahum كعصف مأكول. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سورة النصر. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you so much. Okay, so so I think we had a few questions. Can you? Yes, so I've got a question here for you, Sister Nargis. Can you recommend any books? So, are there any books that you would recommend about the prophets?
There are some books. Usually, the books I use for my research are in Persian. But there's one book that I found really, I think it's somewhat comprehensive, by Sheikh Rizwan Arastu, and it's called God's Emissaries, Adam to Jesus. This is one book that's also available in a PDF format. But other than that, I'll definitely look for some more books, inshallah, if you had a next session, and share the links here in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is unfortunately the end of our 6-part session on prophethood, which will be available on YouTube on our channel. Just so you're aware, there's also another 5-part session on Islamic belief that's running parallel by our esteemed scholars. The next one is tomorrow at 4 p.m. There will be a lecture on divine leadership by Sheikh Mirza Abbas. Also, everyone, remember that Muharram is just around the corner, and we will be having a series of 10 interactive sessions for children that will be running for them from the 1st of Muharram till the 10th. And just also be aware that if you want to be updated with upcoming regular programs, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So please keep Team 14 in your du'as. Keep safe. Jazakallah khair. And Allah Hafiz, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sister Iram.
Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Assalamu alaikum.